Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure, and what you're looking at is the 1998 ugly Honda TRX300EX. Not only does this thing look ugly, it doesn't run very well also, so let's say it runs ugly. We managed to get it started last time. Basically, I cleaned the carburetor that was on there, the OEM, and it started and didn't run well. So I adjusted the valves and it ran a little better. Didn't need starting fluid to start, but still didn't run well. I swapped out the carburetor because the way it was running, it seemed to be a little bit rich. It had a little bit of that chug chug. Though it had that chug chug, it really wasn't belching anything bad out the exhaust. And I know somebody's been in this engine. I know somebody worked on it. Somebody hacked on this thing. So now you start becoming suspicious about what did they do to this poor engine. And to that end, you take the bolts out of the top. You can take the skull cap off. Don't forget to take off your oil line. Pay attention. There's a copper gasket there, and there's a copper gasket on the other side. You really don't want to lose those, and you don't want to drop them into your crankcase. So we got the skull cap. I call it the skull cap, the top of the head off, the cam covers, the cam cover, or whatever you want to call it. I got that off, and just a few things. First of all, right, you're not hearing my fingernail pick anything up, right? Well, that's really good because that means that that's not worn. So we like to see that. It looks relatively clean on top. I mean, a little of their, death gasket material. So, and we see some like loose oil floating around. That's always a good sign to see a little oil, because you kind of want to oil it up here, right? So we like all that. What we're not happy about is the timing chain is crazy loose. And you say, well, it's not enough to jump on top. The bottom gear is much smaller, and it could jump on the bottom. So at the minimum, this is going to need a timing chain. But we still haven't identified why it runs poorly. So the next thing you want to do is you want to cue it up to top dead center. And top dead center is when the lobes are down and you're able to get in here. Right, we'll get these caps off. Right, you want to get in here and see that there's a little T and the notch right here. I'll show you that in 1 second. I'm going to have to get a flashlight and kind of crawl around a little bit to make sure I show it to you. Now the engine rotates like this, right? And you want to be careful not to time it up to the fire. And the fire comes before the T because it takes a millisecond, for the fire to push the piston down. So they fire it as the piston's still coming up, and the explosion is happening just past top dead center, which sends it back down again, right? So you want to make sure you line up to the T, and I'll show you that. Let me just set the camera up and all. So to be sure I'm on top dead center, obviously I look for the T here, but sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the T and the F. I told you should pass the F first, and that brings you to the T, but just in case you're having trouble, I also, obviously, I'm able to turn the crank bolt with this. I find this works better than a ratchet, because with the ratchet, you have a tendency to go too far, then you got to click it to the other way to bring it back again, and so forth. Anyway, with this thing here, you could kind of rock this back and forth, and if you put something obviously long enough where you're not going to drop it in, you kind of put that and you touch the cylinder, and as you're rocking that back and forth with one hand, in my case, my right hand, I could feel as I'm crossing the top dead center, right? So once you do that, let's see if I can actually show you the little T in there nice and clearly. Right, flashlight on. I think you guys could see that, right? The T right in there. I'm slightly off of it. Go forward just a touch. Yeah, I think gone too far. But anyway. You guys could see what I'm up to. So there we are. Now you're at the T, you're at top dead center, and let me show you where the cam should be, where the cam marks are. Once again, just to be sure, I could see the little T there. All right, you guys can see it well. So very, very necessary. Be absolutely sure, because you don't want to time this thing up wrong. Now if you look at the cam, see this mark? I think I'm showing it with my finger, right? I think you guys could see that. Yeah, you could see it. So right there, that's supposed to be at the water level, and you should be looking at a second one right here. So this thing is off probably one tooth. Now the engine rotates upward, so what's happening is your intake valve is opening late. If your intake valve was opening early, that's kind of when they kick back when you're turning them over, and you would get that, you know, it literally stops the starter, you know, and that's when you, on the cheap China stuff, you actually break the timing chain. Now, there are all kinds of great things to do here. Given how floppy this chain is, I think I want to change the chain out before I go forward. Not only is it floppy, but on the, see how it's even loose? It's kind of loose on the sprocket. I could probably fool around with the adjuster a little bit and get it tight enough to start, but I'm a little nervous about doing that. I already got the engine apart, so I think I want to do it right. I ordered a timing chain for this, and timing chains come in two flavors. You got the cheap ones, even though they do claim to have a 2-year warranty, but I'm sure the eBay seller will be long gone, even though, once again, 2-year warranty, and they're based here in the United States. They sell those for about 15 bucks each. You could buy a real timing chain, you know, from one of the brand name people, Dido or whomever, Honda, but you're more like the $75 range for those, you know, 65 to 100, quite honestly. And there's a decision you have to make. In my case, I'm going to put the 2-year chain in there, mostly because I'm not convinced that what else could be wrong with this thing, right? An amateur worked on it before I did. And I'm not pulling the engine off and doing a complete rebuild and everything else, so my lean is to go toward the cheaper chain, and, you know, keep it tight, make sure the adjuster is adjusted, and go forward like that. That's what I'm going to do. Some of you will make a completely different decision. Unfortunately, the decision to change the timing chain now puts this project on hold for a little while, which is a pain in the neck because it's kind of taking space. I already ordered the timing chains, and hopefully they come quickly. I don't know what you guys have been experiencing experiencing with eBay and the mail, or UPS, or Federal Express, or the other one, DHL. But it seems to me that they're all taking forever. Stuff I used to order, particularly a lot of the ignition stuff, I used to order that on a Monday or Tuesday and have it by Friday. Those days are gone. Unless somebody sends it, overnight mail, you're not getting it that quickly, and the Horde can't afford overnight mail for every part I want. This project is going to go on hold for a little while, waiting for parts. And I'll reintroduce it in the future as a timing chain change on one of these things, and how to time it up and all that other kind of stuff. I'm probably going to shortcut the timing chain change. I'm probably going to do a split and a hookup again, which is another reason why I'm going to use a cheap timing chain. By the way, these behaviors are not without possible consequence. Do remember, if you split a timing chain and put it back together again, if it doesn't take it well, if it doesn't work out, and you snap the timing chain itself, as it wraps around the cam, could do quite a bit of that. Or as the timing chain wraps around the crank, it could do quite a bit of damage. Depending on where your valves are, when the piston comes back up, chances are they'll be open. They could get smashy, right? Because without the timing chain, the valves stop opening and closing, and they could get hit. So you don't want to break a timing chain. You also don't want to jump a timing chain, because then the valves open at the wrong time, the piston comes up, smashy, and your engine hand grenades itself inside. So do beware of the risk, and do beware of what you're running. If you're running an all-terrain vehicle that you're out there, and you're going to run you're going to run the legs off it, right? You're going to be out there running with your friends. All your shifts are 6,500 RPM, 7,500 RPM shifts. You're going to have the front wheels off the ground. You're going to race it. Pop for the better parts. Don't use junk. Also, tear it apart. Don't split the chain. If you're going to put it around the property like I have a tendency to do, you could get away with a little less stringent mechanical behaviors. Anyway, I really want to thank everybody who dropped by to watch this video. I hope you learned a lot from it. I want you all to keep your feet down, your heads up, and I want everyone to get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.